Hi, this is David. Welcome to a video review for the first reading that is assigned from Part 2, Topic 6. Topic 6, of course, is Credit Risk Measurement and Management. And the first reading that is assigned is from the book Golin and Delhaize, the Bank Credit Analysis Handbook. This is a book that's been in the FRM for a few years, but not too many years. So we have some seasoning, but we don't have a lot of what I call seasoning in the syllabus, meaning a track record from which to say what we could expect to be tested or not. And so the first reading in Topic 6 is the first chapter of this book. It's the credit decision. It's called the credit decision. And then we have a fairly long list of learning objectives they're all qualitative or conceptual, you'll notice. It's concerned basically with definition of some basic terms, including, I think what's especially important, at least in terms of the FRM track record, is this second to last one, this penultimate learning objective, if you will, where although we don't do any calculations here, at least this would be the formal introduction or reintroduction in Part 2, because we definitely saw this in Part 1, of this most fundamental relationship that determines the expected loss, right? We can see the terms here. Expected loss, we have probability of default, we have loss given default, which I'm sure you know is equal to 1 minus the recovery rate. And we have the exposure at default. This would tend to be given in a dollar basis or currency type basis, right? So that's our fundamental formula. Sometimes we don't have expected exposure at default, and expected loss would just be represented as a percentage. That's also acceptable. But you can see here a straightforward product of two or three multiplicand. Okay, so first learning objective is define credit risk and explain how it arises using examples. And so for purposes of practical analysis, credit risk may be defined as the risk of monetary loss arising from any of the following four circumstances. Default of a counterparty, an increased probability of default on a fundamental financial obligation. Okay, so I'm going to give that a synonym here because authors vary, and elsewhere, right, we would see this referred to as credit deterioration. And a specific class of that would be a credit downgrade, although the downgrade connotes the ratings in particular. So downgrades would be a specific and concrete version of credit deterioration or decrease in credit quality, all of which would be associated with increased probability of default, right? So we would have credit deterioration before we would actually have the default of the counterparty. A higher than expected loss severity, right? So that's a reference to that loss given default. And of course, then that's going to be similar to or equivalent to a reduction in the recovery rate. We want to quantitatively, these are synonyms. And for the default of a counterparty with respect to the payment of funds for goods or services that have already been advanced. Right, so that's settlement risk because, in general, easy to sometimes forget that most of the time when we're looking at credit risk here, we're talking about what is called pre-settlement risk. It's basically a synonym for credit risk. We just want to be mindful that there is also a different sort, the settlement risk, also called hairset risk, and that's actually very real. This is it's parsed out here explicitly.